Welcome to the DNA show.
DNA? Dude, are we doing a science show?
No, D is for Dennis.
Oh, A is for Andy.
And N is for and?
Oh, man, nerds.
Oh, yeah.
We're nerds, dude.
Yeah. Well, good. Then we can talk about comics and movies and pop culture and sports.
Sports and nerds. Yeah, we're going to make that work.
All right, let's roll.
Good day, and welcome to the Dennis and Andy Show. I'm Andy.
And this is Dennis, as usual.
How'd you like that? Did you like how I brought that in?
Yeah.
I was trying to give us a little etiquette.
Just slapping everybody awake to make sure that they know we're on.
Was that a little NPR for you? What were you trying to say?
It is NPR. So,
All right, Dennis, I want you to hear something.
Okay.
Like a serial killer's lair. Alright, listen, motherfuckers. If you deviate from the plan, I'll take a dull fucking blade and cut y'all.
Okay, well, obviously I think...
So, what's that from?
Well, that would be from the Ozarks.
That's right. Ozark.
Oh, and that just wrapped up last week.
Season 3 is in the can, and you find... Now, I watched the week it dropped, which was a few weeks ago now. I gotta admit, that was my weekend. I started it Friday night, going into it knowing I'm not going to go to bed till late. I'm going to get up Saturday, all excited like a kid on Christmas to want to turn it on and keep watching, but I got stuff to do, so I have to wait till Saturday night. I did. And then I believe I finished it Sunday afternoon.
That's impressive.
And then I told you, have you watched it? And you're like, no, I'm still doing this. I'm watching Shameless. I'm watching this. And you made all these dumb excuses.
Yep. He guilted me. He absolutely guilted me. Well, I'm done. And I want to talk about it. That's nice. I've got all these other shows I'm trying to catch up on. And so every day, did you watch them yet? Nope. I did not power through. Well, the problem was I was actually a season behind. I had season 2 and 3 to watch.
God, even worse.
I know. Because he's like, well, where are you in the show? And I was like, well, this was the last thing that happened. He goes, are you sure?
No,
Yeah.
What you said was, I believe you said, oh, I'm on episode 8. And I'm like, sweet, you only got a few left. We can talk about season 2. And I was like, oh my God, are you serious?
So he shamed me.
2? Good Lord.
So, yeah, we had that couple of rainy days. So I literally walked in and I said, all right, I'm being shamed and guilted even more. So I told my wife, I'm like, well, I'm not watching your stuff. I'm sitting down, popping some popcorn, and closing all the curtains. Going to make it dark, movie theater-like, and here we go. So I literally sat for a couple of days and just plowed right through it so that we could talk about Ozark. And was it worth the wait? I think it was.
Now, we'll say this. We're talking about it. If you haven't seen season 3, too bad. Because we're talking.
Lots of spoilers. We will literally give away the ending.
Yes, it's been, I don't know, the show's been out since, I believe it dropped the beginning of May, so you know what? You've had your chance. I'm sorry. Skip this episode. As much as I love our listeners, you're just going to have to turn it off. Or maybe you will listen to us talk about it and be like, man, that sounds awesome. So this episode picks up, or this season, picks up, season 2 left off, which is now basically, they have a gambling boat.
They do.
Casino.
They do. It's an unpowered one that they managed to get down the river, but they've got it.
What is that, Dennis? Is that me?
Nope.
Oh, I stopped it. My phone, even on vibrate, it somehow knows how to make a noise.
Yep.
Yeah, so we pick up with Marty McBride and Wendy... Bride, not McBride. I'm thinking McFly for some reason. I don't know why. Different actor, everything. So we pick up with Marty Bride and Wendy Bride, and they are now the owners of a casino boat. And they're still in bed with, that lawyer lady who, that actress, if you're wondering, was also
That's Janet McTeer.
Janet McTeer. That's
Yep,
yeah,
that's
Janet
Helen.
McTeer. Helen, who was also in Jessica Jones, if you're wondering.
Yeah.
Jessica's mom in season 2 of that series. So anyhow, she's a great actress. She plays a villain rather well. I love Jason Bateman as an actor. Anyhow, love his character. The guy can just, I don't know. I remember watching him as a kid.
Yep.
And which is funny because when I was a kid, he kind of was too. He's not that much older than us. So
He's one of my favorite actors. And, tell him Cotton.
exactly.
Dodgeball.
Yeah.
But we all grew up with his sister,
Right.
Justine, from
Family Ties.
Family Ties.
Yeah, Family Ties. So, and then Laura Linney, she's fantastic.
She's always awesome.
And the clip I played was by Julia Garner, who plays Ruth, who is just, she's my favorite in the show.
Hands
by
down.
far.
Hands down.
Favorite character in the show. I mean, let's be real. I don't think it's a stretch to say that she's white trash.
She plays it well.
Comes from a white trash family. Yeah, not the actress.
Yeah, and her, because her accent is so amazing, and since we had just talked about Waco, she was in there playing a completely different person,
Yeah.
so she's got acting chops. This isn't just her being herself.
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, this Ozark was my first, I guess, my discovery of her as an actress. I've never seen her in anything before Ozark. So, whenever I see an actor for the first time, I don't know, I just default to, that's probably how she usually talks. Because most actors don't go out of their way to change the way they speak, but they will for a role, and she definitely, tacked on an accent and stuff for this.
Yep.
And just knocks it out of the park. She's fantastic. She's ballsy. I mean, you heard that clip. She holds nothing back.
Right, and she's got such a diverse role that she has to play because she basically plays the mother figure to her, brother and cousin, or cousins, both.
Cousins, something.
But,
Definitely
and then since her dad was in prison and her brother, she kind of offed because he was a bad man who was screwing up her plans. So you kind of root for her because she takes the world by the horns, but she's inexperienced, but she doesn't care. She figures out ways to do it, and she figures out a way to protect her family. She's just a very dynamic character.
And she plays basically in season 3, she's basically the manager of the casino.
Yeah.
She runs it basically. Jason Bateman, obviously, Marty's the owner. But, on the day-to-day stuff, on the floor, she's like the pit boss.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes.
They get wrapped up in this season with feds. There's feds that come in, FBI, There's the...
Because they try to buy a second casino,
Exactly.
which trips them and gives the Fed the reason to come in the first place.
Right. And Marty, and this is where Marty, Jason Bateman's character, and Wendy, his wife, played by Laura Linney, butt heads. Because he's like, look, we can't do this. We cannot take on a second casino that'll raise red flags. Right now, we're pretty much, they're pretty much in the clear.
Well, they're dealing with the drug cartel from Mexico on one side. They're dealing with the Snells, which are the local drug folks that are running their stuff in there. And they're also a really great husband and wife cast there.
Well, not anymore. Now it's just the wife. Because Darlene, played by Lisa Emery, once again, if you didn't watch it, that's your loss, or your problem, I guess, because we're talking. In season 2... she offs her husband.
Yeah.
Which...
in a dramatic scene because they were butting heads.
Yeah, they were butting heads. Because, look, he's the husband. He's old school. He comes from the thinking... and they're older. They're in their 60s. And so he comes from the thinking of, look, I run the show. I'm the husband.
Right. And my word is the bond.
Right.
So they do things on a handshake.
Yeah.
And she keeps undermining him and going and creating problems because she's a hothead. And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say it's really a parallel to, Marty and Wendy. Because Wendy is really trying to undermine everything Marty's doing to keep the family safe.
Right, in her way. So Marty's trying to be safe, at least as safe as possible, dealing with the drug cartel and a local druggie, by trying to make the casino the safe spot that they can do it. Well, she's trying to do it, and she wants to move ahead with it. And, of course, the lawyer, Helen, I mean, she's right up there with Laura, and it's, go... We're going to do this, but she never talks to Marty about it, and he suspects things, goes in and finds out that he's right, and then therefore tries to undercut her while she's trying to do things, but she lies to him about it. So both of the main women on both sides basically undercut their husbands, creating big problems within the families and therefore in the main storyline.
And then also, Jason Bateman's Marty and Laura Linney's Wendy are going to a marriage counselor. But what they don't know, what neither one of them know is that they're each paying the marriage counselor behind each other's back to say stuff they want them to say. So if Dennis and I were going to see a counselor, I'd be going to the counselor after or before the session saying, hey, here's $50. I need you to push Dennis this way. While Dennis is doing the exact same thing.
But I'd be paying $100 and saying, go this way.
Exactly.
I want to be right.
Right. So this marriage counselor is just taking the money from both of them and trying to play both sides and stuff.
And does successfully for quite a while.
Yeah, until there's an episode where she just basically loses it.
Okay, so I'm going to admit, this is probably one of my favorite parts in the season. So she's this tiny little old lady that's maybe 5 foot tall.
Yeah.
And she just sits there and she smiles and she says a few things here and there. And, and then finally they're both arguing about this. And she goes, well, honestly, I think you're both basically on crack. And they're like, well, what do you mean? You're both paying me under the table to do things your way. And they were shocked that it was. Then they get into this huge fight. So Marty and Wendy are yelling at each other. Well, at least I didn't kill this person with this. And at least I didn't do this with the feds. So they air all of their open laundry with her sitting there without realizing they're doing it because they're just so angry. Yeah. So then, oh damn, we just spilled all the illegal things in front of us.
Because while they're seeing the counselor, they don't mention any of the bad stuff. They just come across like a married couple that need counseling. And they, in this episode, literally drop all the illegal shit they're doing.
And her jaws drops on the floor.
The counselor's jaws just hit the floor. So they have to pay her off.
And Jason Bateman turns around. Oh, and he realized it. He looks at her and he's like, oh, damn. That's going to cost us. So they wind up paying her $100,000 basically of hush money. Just don't say anything. Be good. Don't, we're good. Just don't ever say anything to anybody. And you're thinking, wow, I hope this maybe works this way. But in your mind, you're already going, not going to happen.
No, because she's not the smartest either.
And so, what does she do to prove that point, Andy?
She rolls up to the
week.
The following week, she rolls up to the Bird's house. Marty and Wendy's house, and what? A Lamborghini?
A brand new, bright yellow supercar.
Yeah.
Yes. And it was like,
that's not going to raise flags.
And she can't even drive it because she doesn't drive stick. So you can hear her trying to grind it out. Yeah, drives up, which of course, who winds up seeing it? The lawyer for the drug cartel. And she goes, well, we've got to deal with this.
Yeah. So we're not going to ruin everything for you, but let's just say Helen has a couple ways to talk to the marriage counselor to take care of this problem. And we'll leave that side out of it. But back to the casino stuff, what cracked me up is, so Wendy wants to buy this casino, another boat, floating casino. And, of course, Jason Bateman, Marty is totally against it. So they go and he tries to tell her, but she's pig-headed, tries to move forward with it. So they go talk to the husband and wife that own it. And once again, playing against each other, Jason Bateman, Marty pulls the husband aside and basically starts telling him, if you do this, you're just really letting your wife have all the power. I mean, is that who you are? Are you going to let her call all the shots? Just saying.
Yep, and it sticks in the craw.
It sticks in this guy's, because he's in his 60s, and he's like, what? I can't have that. So, that leads him to, kibosh the deal, which Laura Linney just can't have.
But the cool thing about how they kibosh it is, so he winds up undercutting Laura Linney's purchasing, because, picture a river. They're trying to buy this river casino, but literally right across the river, within sight's view, is another competitor riverboat that's on the river casino. And they're like, well, we're losing it because they're newer, they're better and stuff like this. Look, they're even going to do a 4th of July fireworks celebration. So he hires guys to go in from the Teamsters Union, basically.
Right.
That's what they make it sound like. To go in there, and they basically sabotage all the fireworks. So when they go to do it, literally the entire boat blows up and flies up in there. Well, therefore, there's no competition, so they don't have to sell it, even at 7% over market value.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and it was glorious to see it explode like this. There was their budget for the season.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, well, special effects, they're not cheap. But they do end up getting it. I'm trying to remember, because it has been a bit for me. How'd they end up getting it? Because...
Well...
So, they did pressure him into selling, and they do eventually. But the Bateman family, the Birds, finally do get the casino.
Yes, so they go back and offer them even more money, and they're like, "Well, that's nice, but we
don't need it now.
We don't need it because we're going to do fine for a while because the other casino's gone." And the two ladies wind up forcing it and meet with the husband, and they go, "Look, why don't you do this?" And then she finds out that it was Marty that sabotaged him in the first place while meeting with the husband in secret.
Right.
And yeah, the whole thing basically comes to a head, and she finds out that it was Marty that was actually sabotaging all of her plans. So they wind up paying for it. And then he's out on a walk with the wife, the couple that are selling. And they're talking, and he finally puts his foot down, and he's sitting down as they're walking on the ledge. Right. And she's sitting there and he goes, you're about going to listen to me now. And she's like, right. No, I'm not. And he says something and accidentally turns her out and hits her. She flies over the railing, rolls down the large mountain, hits her head, and winds up basically dying in the river.
And then the husband,
he's like,
and this is the couple that, owns the casino. That
the nice couple.
Birds, the nice couple. The Birds are trying to buy. So he just ended up going, that problem's taken care of.
Accidentally killed him. Well, she started going off on him.
Right.
You're no good. You're worthless. I should have married your brother and so-and-so and so-and-so. And he didn't mean to do it. It was an accident.
Oh, yeah.
But to show the lack of remorse, and he was like, well, she's dead. And he kind of looks around and just walks off to go sell.
Yep.
Oh, my. Yeah.
So they end up getting the second casino. But then, the feds are involved, and there's a female FBI agent who's pregnant, who is going over all the transactions and all the books.
And she's smart.
The main casino, and she's really smart. And Martin Bird, Jason Bateman's character, has this wonderful plan that he thinks he can flip her, which I'm just like, dude, you're getting ahead of your skis now.
Right. Now, she realizes that Marty's actually smarter than her, and she knows it.
Right.
So she's trying to get him to flip and basically turn state's evidence and say, look, you'll have to do a little jail time, but we can set you free. Well, deep inside, Marty knows that's not happening with this drug cartel. You can never get me far enough underground without them finding me.
Right.
And he knows this.
Yeah.
So he has to flip her, and that's what he winds up telling him. So, needless to say, hence... they're both trying to flip each other.
Yep. It's just...
This was such a well-done season.
It's such a well-done season. We're not going to talk about it anymore because you guys you have to watch it.
Except for the ending. I mean, come on, seriously. I had to call... Andy was sitting there going, dude, dude, you got to get it done. You've got to see the ending. And I'm like, okay, I love the season. And I was like, well, I don't know what could be so big about the ending. Let's just say the ending comes, they wind up fly down to Mexico, even though the FBI agent calls and says, hey, don't go. Things are going to, you can't get on that plane because if you do, you won't be coming back.
Right. She's talking to Marty.
Right.
Bateman's character, because Marty and Wendy and Helen, the lawyer, are going to fly down to Mexico to meet with the cartel guy. And yeah, the FBI agent calls Marty and basically, like Dennis says, don't get on the plane. Tries to warn him.
Because the cartel's children are actually staying with Helen in the States because he's losing the drug war down there.
Right.
And they've already killed off a whole bunch of his family.
Right.
So it's safe enough for them to come back. So they're all flying down there. And your entire thought is, as soon as they get off that plane, Marty and Wendy are dead.
Which, something's got to happen because that would kill the show.
Right.
So they can't kill, they can't, it's tough because you're definitely on the edge of your seat because you're like, well, you're trying to game it out in your head like, well, it would be a huge shock if they killed Jason Bateman's character, but depending on, it's 3 seasons now, so they could get away with it because if they do, I'm really entrenched in this show. I want to see what happens if they do that, so I'd probably come back. But that's a huge gamble because he is the star of the show.
Yep, I would
So
agree.
then you think, well, they could kill his wife and put the fear of God into Jason Bateman saying, we just did this to your wife and you do have 2 kids.
Right.
And then I would definitely come back for the show because Jason Bateman's still in it. Nothing against Laura Linney, but I'm a big Jason Bateman fan. He's still in it. So I'm like, well, that could happen.
And they've set it up where Helen is taking care of the kids. They're flying back there. She's already asked permission from the head of the cartel. We need to get rid of the Batemans. I don't trust them. Jason Bateman and his wife. So they were like, we need to get rid of them. And you're thinking, oh my God, they are literally going to die. So you're setting up something's going to happen. Maybe the other drug cartel shows up, some big firefight, who knows, but something bad is going to happen. And it does.
It does. They get off the plane.
The kids go inside, he hugs them, his children, and the
cartel
nanny.
boss, yep.
Yep.
And they walk up, Bateman, or the birds, so, Jason Bateman, Laura Linney, the lawyer, all walk up to the cartel leader, and they greet him, and you're just like, it's kind of tense. And then the camera kind of zooms in onto Wendy and Marty, so Laura Linney and Jason Bateman. And then there's a pow, kapow, bam, gunshot. And there's a bunch of blood and brains splattered all over the side of Wendy's hair. And they shot the lawyer.
Yep. And then he walks around and puts both his hands around
the cartel boss.
The cartel around Wendy and Marty. And he's like, well, we have work to do. And I was like, whoa!
And that's how the season ends.
They took her out. And I'm like,
just like, oh my God.
Goosebumps. Never saw it coming.
Never saw that coming. I mean, just out of the blue, took her out. So it's,
We warned you we were spoiling this.
We warned you, but at the same time, there's another really good actor in it. He was in... we won't get into too much, but he was in Iron Fist. He plays a character named Ben.
Yeah, that's her brother. That's
Wendy's brother. He's awesome. Great actor. Lots of drama with him in the show. Stuff happens with him. We're not going to spoil everything. So if you think we have, trust us, we haven't. If you haven't watched Ozark, plan the next 3 weekends to just watch season 1, season 2, then season 3. If you've been on the fence of watching season 3 because you're like, it's been so long since season 2, trust us. They do a nice recap at the beginning of episode 1, season 3. Watch it. You won't be disappointed. You'll love it.
Each season gets better. That's all we need to say. It's worth the investment. Season 1's really good. Season 2's better. Season 3's even better.
Yep. So let's just hope that it's not 18 months until season 4.
Yep. So then we were like, all right, we need to do something comic book related. So what's coming out? So then one of my buddies called up. He goes, dude, I just picked up Superman Red Sun. I was like, oh, Red Sun. So it's an Elseworlds book. So love everything that DC usually does with the Elseworld. I remember reading the comic book and I was like, oh, that is probably top 3 of my favorite, what if type stories from DC.
What do you think? When do you think Red Sun came out as the comic? 20 years ago? In the 2000s.
Yeah, it was.
It was in the 2000s.
Yeah, early.
It was before 2010.
Yeah. I remember reading it. I mean, I was still, living up north and stuff like that. It was
I remember when it came out. Mark Millar wrote it. The main artist was Dave Johnson. It was 4-issue, prestige format. Then obviously came out as a trade paperback, collecting it all. Dave drew most of it. He had to have some art help on the last few issues. I don't think he even worked on the very last issue of it. Andrew Robinson drew some of it. I think Killian Plunkett did as well. I'm actually friends with Dave. I'm friends with Andrew Robinson. So one of the reasons I picked it up when it came out was because I'm friends with Dave. I like Dave's art, so I'll pick up stuff he does. I like, Dave now mostly just does covers. He doesn't do a lot of interior work, which is a shame. And even back then, he was mostly known for covers. So when I saw he was doing an interior project with Superman and it was Elseworlds, I had to get it. I've always been a fan of Mark Millar's writing, so that was a definite plus. The basic story centers around, what if Superman's rocket didn't crash land in Kansas? What if it crash landed in the USSR? Back in the USSR!
Right. That was Andy, by the way.
Back in the USSR!
Yeah, what if Superman was Rusky?
What if he was a commie?
Yep. What if? And what a unique take. And I remember reading it when the comic book came out going, wow, this is such an interesting take. And then the ending blows your mind, which I'll get into later because we need to go through it.
Right.
So loved the comic book when it came out. So then my buddy up in Wisconsin called me and he's like, dude, just watched Red Sun, just bought it because it just hit the stores. And I'm like, all right. He watched it, says it's really good. So I'm like, got to. So sat down and watched it, called Andy, said, dude, have you seen it yet? And he went, nope, go see it. I wound up going comic book hunting with one of my friends, and while we were waiting for one of our friends to show up, I'm like, dude, have you seen it? No. He rented it, so I saw it again right away, pretty much back to back. And it was worth it. The art style is very similar from the movie to what their other animated series are. So it's very Bruce Timm, and
I thought they did so one of the, I don't watch a lot of the animated stuff. Part of it's because once I read it in comic book form, I like to sometimes they change stuff. Another one that they adapted, and we're not going to get into a long discussion, but the art style made me think of it. They did, Public Enemy, Superman, Batman, Public Enemies. And Public Enemies, that came out, 20 years ago. The comic book was drawn by Ed McGuinness. It was written by Jeff Loeb. Well, when they did the animated cartoon adaptation of that, they really tried to stick to Ed McGuinness's art style, which is easy because Ed has more of a animated, cartoony type style anyhow. With Red Sun, Dave Johnson's artwork it's stylized realism. I think it would be harder to adapt to an animated style, but where I think they actually nailed it when I was watching it, when Batman appeared. Mm-hmm. When Russian, because they did Russian counterparts for basically Batman,
Wonder Woman.
We'll get into the other. They brought in Green Lantern, but Green Lantern was American to kind of stop Superman. Anyhow, getting back to the art style, when I saw the Batman, knowing that Dave designed the costume for all the characters in the Red Sun graphic novel, they stuck to the costume designs, but just in the face itself, I thought they really stuck to Dave's art style for Batman's face, in the chin area especially. When he came on screen, I looked at that and I was like, now that looks like a Dave Johnson drawing, which I thought was really cool. Story-wise, I'd say it was probably, and I haven't seen all of them, So for the few I've seen, I'd say it was probably the most faithful adaptation of a graphic novel
Yeah.
that DC's done.
There were a few changes. So
And what were the major changes? Because it's been a while, so I couldn't even tell you.
So when it starts out, so everybody knows that, Superman, and then Lana Lang
Right.
as the girlfriends, early on and stuff, and she has a pivotal time in their life where, he really
Superman.
shapes a lot of his early experiences.
And this is the Superman Kansas when he met Lana Lang.
Right. So now in this one, in the comic book, she is there. All right. And he still shapes it. In the cartoon, she makes a brief appearance, but you actually see her more as she's working in the museum and stuff like that. There's a girl, another redheaded girl named Svetlana, that winds up being there in his early childhood, and he's the one, she sticks up for him because she doesn't know that he's got powers.
Right.
And all the boys over in Russia chase him to beat him up all the time. And then she protects him, Svetlana does, and she goes, you're going to have to start sticking up for yourself. And he makes a great comment. Well, I wasn't running to not get beaten up. I was running so that I didn't hurt them. And she goes, what? And he literally picks up, picture like from a 1919 old tractor that's got the steel tires from there. He literally picks it up and she's like, whoa. So she winds up being his early focal point that sticks throughout the entire show. Whereas, so that's one of the major differences. They've removed her.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
She wasn't in it all. She was in the Gulag, right?
Svetlana's in the Gulag.
That's what I meant. Svetlana was in the Gulag.
Right. So it winds up being her. So the other big one in the early part that's different is in the comic books, it was Stalin was running the country,
right,
and he had sons, all right, his children.
Right. And
he treated Russian Superman, more like his son than he did his own sons.
Right.
So in the comic book, his own sons wind up basically using cyanide and killing off Stalin.
Oh, and I didn't remember that.
Yeah, there's always this interplay between him and the sons, and they don't like each other. Well, in this case, she flies over to, in this version, they wind up dropping a Russian satellite from space, and of course Superman flies over. Lex Luthor does, because Lex Luthor is married to
Lois Lane.
And different type of a couple. So they're married here, and Superman flies over, does it, and says, Americans, you fear me because you don't understand me. I'm not here to do this. And then, of course, Lois steps up and she's like, but look, everybody, if you don't fear us, you fear the American news media. And he comes back and does not. And they start having a very interesting capitalistic versus socialist, debate.
Yeah, communist. Whatever.
Right. It winds up being very interesting. However, he goes, yes, but your American dream doesn't mesh with what you have. And she goes, we know there's problems, but you also have your own issues. And he goes, no, we don't.
Right.
And
He's
she
totally blinded by it.
Right. And she hands him classified information, and he looks, and you can see him just start sculling. He gets angry. He doesn't believe it. So he seen change. He goes back to Russia.
Yeah, he flies from Metropolis back to Russia, basically to these gulags.
Right. Well, looks like the Siberian salt mines, and there's two guards.
Right. With these two guards, but he breaks into it and he realizes they're keeping, their citizens, some citizens prisoners there.
Yes.
In the gulags, and one of them is Svetlana.
But he never knew it was there because it's all shielded in lead, and he goes, why would they shield this in lead?
Right. Oh yeah.
Except for if they don't want me to see it. So the guards aren't going to argue with him. They're like, well, crap, it's Superman. Then he rips the door off, hops in the elevator, and actually goes down. And when he gets down there, he sees that citizens are being tortured. They're in poverty. They're dying. They don't see any sun. And he's really upset. And the two important things that happen down there are, one, Svetlana's there, and he's like, what are you doing here? And It's because I knew who you were before you were Superman.
Right. So they had to imprison her. Yeah. Had to lock her up. Can't let that get out.
The best part down there was there's a little boy. He goes, obviously you never heard our scream, Superman, crying for help. And then he turns away, and what comes flying out of the ceiling?
A bat!
Not one bat, a bunch of bats!
And I was like, oh my God, is that Bruce?
Is that young Bruce?
Is that young Batman?
Yep.
Because they never called him by Bruce or anything.
No, they never gave him a name, but he stood there with those eyes, staring at Superman, standing up to him, even as a little boy with like 5 pounds of meat on him.
Yeah.
And
now that
also the bats
comic,
coming in there. It was similar in the comic book, but a little bit different. Oh. So the background is the same. Remember. Svetlana was not in the comic from that part.
Well, because that's what in the movie. He carries Svetlana out into the sunlight so she can see it and stuff.
For one last time
before she dies. And that's what just sets him off.
Right. But she makes a really great comment. He goes, I used to protect you from the bullies. Now, when I'm gone, you need to protect everybody else from the bullies. Because it's all about the power and the strongest. And she goes, you are the strongest of all. And she dies, and he actually wells up with tears. Oh, yeah. And then he goes off. And then what does he do then? The important part is, this is where it completely differs from the book. He winds up flying to who? To Stalin. He wind up having a conversation. He's like, why would you do this? Why would you imprison the people? He kept touching Superman. He's like, you just don't understand. Right. I had to keep this from you. But why is this important? Because at the end, he's like, I did this because you wouldn't be able to do this. And, you have to kill certain people for this government to work.
Right.
Superman turns, looks at him, and goes, you are correct about that. His eyes glow red, and he disintegrates Stalin right there.
I got to admit, I paused it, rewound it, and watched it again because I was just like, whoa, he just incinerated Stalin.
Yep. And it's awesome because now the book's not like that at all.
No.
So, but he realized he didn't want to take control. But all of a sudden the guards come busting in the door. They got their guns pointed at Superman and they looked at him. It was number 2. And he's like, yeah. They put their guns down and
they kneel.
And they're like,
kneel before Red Sun.
Kneel before Zod.
Well, you see an ash heap of Stalin. You're like, oh, well, yeah, I guess we'll kneel before Superman here. He just incinerated that guy.
Yeah.
And then they did. After that, they stuck pretty faithful to the book.
Yes, it was really solid. Now, again, a couple of the minor differences are, in the original comics, Lois Lane's there. She's more of the damsel in distress and stuff like this.
Right.
And this version of her, it's quite a bit different. Jimmy Olsen's in it. It's different from the book. The original book, he was more like himself, but he was the head of the CIA, which he is here. They've altered him a little bit.
But he became vice president in the book, just like he did in the movie.
Yes, and then eventually winds up taking over.
Lex becomes president.
Yes.
And then... he elects or picks Jimmy for his vice president. Just like in the book, Lois and Lex's relationship starts off kind of okay, but you can kind of even see in the beginning, it's Lex. He's a narcissist. He's self-absorbed. He's more about his own thing. He forgets anniversaries. He just basically, she's just like, window dressing almost.
Right.
So she kind of pulls away some.
But she's very strong-minded and strong-hearted, and she's got her own agenda, and she kind of knows, well, then I'm just going to go do my thing.
Wonder Woman shows up. She's not necessarily Russian. She's still from the island.
Themyscira
of Amazonians and stuff. But she's more aligned with Russia because of Superman than she is with the United States.
Well, the two of them become very, very good friends. And again, there's a slight difference in it in the original book versus the movie. Because then he reaches out. They have this really deep friendship. Superman thinks it's more. He leans in to kiss her, and she's like, whoa,
hey there, boss man.
And he's like, but did I misinterpret something? And he goes, well, I'm from an island of all women. Do the math.
Right.
And he's like, oh. But But they do. They develop a friendship.
They do, yeah. But that was, I gotta admit, that was pretty funny in the movie.
Yes.
So, and then, Batman shows up, little kid grows up, becomes Batman, and wants, he does not like Superman.
Right.
So
Just
he wants to take him out. Yeah.
But he feels that Superman, so Superman does what Stalin did, but in a different way. Brainiac winds up coming to Earth, and Superman defeats him. He brings his big ship, he smashes through the force field, captures Brainiac, and it's a really cool picture. And they actually got a really cool, I think it's like a hot toy, of it. And you can get the exclusive one where he's carrying Brainiac's head, the Red Sun Superman.
Oh, yeah.
And, so anyway, he captures it, reprograms Brainiac to basically be his servant, and he starts going through and increasing the Warsaw Pact through fear and war. So, like, the Korean War completely changes, and he goes in and sweeps up the entire war in like a day or two, and it changes. So Russia keeps growing and growing and growing, the Warsaw Pact does, and democracy keeps shrinking. It's basically... it's like the United States and like Brazil or one other South American country.
Much.
Yeah. Very interesting. So they turn around and you wind up falling into it. So he continues decade by decade. So you start out with Eisenhower.
Yeah.
And then you got Kennedy, and Kennedy's in his 7th year, so he's already been reelected twice.
Kennedy even says a bad word in the movie.
He does, even with a pretty good accent.
The actor. I don't know who they cast to play Kennedy or voice Kennedy, but when he cussed, it just cracked me up.
It was great
because he's talking that they introduce Kennedy because an alien comes to Earth. He's dead, and it's basically Abin Sur, the original Green Lantern.
Right, and again, in the book, it wasn't. It was just someone else. So,
right.
Yes.
So they have this ring. They pull off of him, and they want to mass produce it. And Kennedy instructs Hal Jordan to be the basic leader that's going to oversee the mass production and lead the Corps. So the U.S. is behind the Green Lantern Corps, and they don't get into details of how they mass produced this ring, and
we assume
reverse engineered it,
right? Like in the book, we know that Hal Jordan can, duplicate his ring just by his own will and give it to other people.
Right.
So you're assuming they figure out how to do that, and he's able to generate it. And who are some of the other people in his corps?
Oh, you got Jon Stewart, you got Guy Gardner. Are those only two they really mentioned in the movie?
No, they got Rayner, because they call him Rayner.
Oh, that's right.
Yep. So they've got Kyle and stuff now.
Yep.
They're not identical to the counterparts from, any of our books.
No, they don't wear, they all wear almost like just typical.
Right, they're like flight
uniforms.
suits.
Yeah, they wear flight suits, so they're not wearing Green Lantern costumes, which I was bummed. I was really hoping to see come on, they could have created a Green Lantern costume, not just a stupid green flight suit.
But they did that based off the comic book.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah.
I know. So, so then there's this conflict battle between the Green Lanterns and Superman, and obviously Superman wins.
It was great because Wonder Woman comes to his rescue again, but she's seeing the turn that Superman's taking, that he rules everything with an iron fist, but he didn't want that.
I'm done with that.
And she kept saying, the Queen's against this, and I'm giving you one last chance to help out. The Green Lanterns wind up boxing him in. It's awesome. And they're shrinking him down. Superman is lost. And all of a sudden, all you see are two bracelets in the air and white light. All the Green Lanterns wind up going, they get shaken, and Superman breaks free, and it's Wonder Woman who's lost all of her powers now.
But you know what? Wait, she was flying, though.
Right, she lost most of her powers, and they talk about, because in their world, she gets it from the gods that have given it, because she loses it in the most dramatic sense, which is early. There's the big fight with Batman and Superman.
Right.
Which is pretty close to the original.
Yeah, it's a very climatic. We'll save that one for you to watch. But
you have to see that.
The costume she was wearing, though, when she came in to break up the fight between the Green Lanterns and Superman, it wasn't the red and blue. It was mostly white and with some gold.
Right.
And you know what it reminded me of? Do you remember the Stan Lee Imagines the Marvel Universe and the one-shot Wonder Woman one? Jim Lee drew it.
Oh.
And he designed a costume that was white and gold. And that's what it reminded me of.
I hadn't thought of that.
Was that kind of like I don't remember the book that well, even though it's on my bookshelf. The costume she was wearing in the cartoon when she broke up the fight that was white and gold, was that kind of like the one from the book? Do you remember?
It's similar now that you say that. I totally had blanked on that.
Yeah. Anyhow, won't spoil the ending. I mean, should we talk about the ending?
Well, okay, so the ending is important. You talk about the movie because this is where it's totally different from the book.
All right, we're going to talk about that. We talked about most of it.
We'll skip over the Batman Superman, but we'll just say the fight scene between them is the most epic out of any of the reimaginations of these two going at it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's just basically because you always think, well, how does Superman fight? Or how does Batman have a chance against Superman?
Kryptonite.
Blah, blah, blah. Right, Kryptonite, but that wasn't the key.
Right.
This one.
This was totally different.
It was totally different. So, we're not even going to talk about it. We'll just get to the end when it comes down to basically, Brainiac, Luthor, and Superman.
Yeah. So what's awesome in the movie, he comes over. Brainiac's been pushing Superman this whole time. You need to strike America. They're actually a threat. We're actually seeing them building because Luthor is now president and he's rebuilding, and it's showing that democracy is outpacing everything that they're doing, even with Superman on there. And Superman's like, no. I want to do it the real way. I don't want to do it by force. I can always do it by force. But basically, communism is better, and I'm going to prove it.
Right, without force.
And that's when the Green Lantern Corps comes over. He winds up beating. He goes, well, that's it. I guess we will take the fight to him. So him and Brainiac and the ship go over, and there's no fighting.
They show up at the White House.
Yep, empty. I mean, there's literally nobody. All of a sudden, the door opens up, and it's Lois Lane.
Yep.
She walks out, and what's she holding?
She's holding a little city... Stalingrad, yeah.
Yeah, he shrank it, just like he does in the comic books.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? And it basically, a slight difference in there, in the book, she x-ray visions the letter from Lex Luthor, and in here, she just goes, it's, you wanted your world in a bottle. And she basically goes, where did you get that? Well, that's unimportant, because we know Lex can get anything.
Right.
And he goes, the fact is, this is a microcosm of everything that you've done. And he's like, wow. And it dawns on him that Wonder Woman was right. Everybody was right. He's gone too far.
Yep.
And then what happens?
Brainiac kind of snaps.
He does.
Yeah, Brainiac.
That's unacceptable.
Brainiac snaps because he's like, no, because Brainiac was almost trying to work Superman from behind the whole time.
Yes.
Without Superman knowing it.
Right. You find out it was a Brainiac ploy all along.
Right.
He didn't really get captured. He let himself be captured and let him thought he was being programmed. So he manipulated Superman into taking over most of the world, and he wanted him to finish the job. So he doesn't. They wind up going into this big fight. Lex Luthor saves Lois, in his cool suit.
In his cool suit.
Being
Lex
president.
His Lex suit. Not costume, but robotic, Iron Man-esque suit.
Yep. And they wind up winning. Long story short, they wind up winning. It was a great final battle scene. They defeat Brainiac once and for all. And then Brainiac sets a doomsday device on it where basically it'll wipe out the entire solar system. And he goes, well, there's nothing we can do. Even you can't fly that fast to take it away. Right. And he goes, we'll see about that. And it was awesome. He took it out there, saves it. He becomes not only president, he winds up retiring. The world is really great. And you're thinking, oh, that's the end. And then she sees Superman as Clark Kent dressed up with him out in there for a brief second and realizes he survived.
Yep.
All right. So this is where it's big time different. So the comic book has a twist, and this is why I like Mark Millar and the way that he wrote this. So everything we talked about was very similar that happened in the book. But in the book, there's more that this wound up skipping. So the important thing, like they skipped Doomsday, they skipped Parasite, all the big villains that were in the comic book.
Yeah.
And then at the end, after everything was survived, they had Lex Luthor and Lois had kids.
Yep.
Who had kids. Who had kids.
Yep.
And you fast forward, they wind up getting so advanced that they wind up exploring other planets. So they wind up exploring other planets, found another planet, their civilization gets very advanced. And then the Luthors, one of the great-great-great-great-great-grandsons, winds up having a son who they name Jor-El. And their son starts going supernova and is going to die. So the Luthors wind up sending their only son to another off planet to save him.
Right.
And it winds up getting hit with like a space warp, time warp thing. And that winds up crashing back in the 20s,
yeah, something like that.
Early 1900s in Russia.
Yep.
So it's an entire huge, awesome loop. It's a continuous, closed story.
So the cartoon's great, but what Dennis just touched on is only in the graphic novel. The graphic novel has many more layers. It's definitely worth a read. It's been reprinted numerous times, so you can get it hardcover, softcover. I think they've done not a remastered edition, but like a director's cut type one, a definitive edition where they've added some bonus material in the back. It's definitely worth reading. If you like it, I would definitely search out the cartoon and watch it, rent it. You won't be disappointed. It's a great book.
It's very faithful, but there's a couple of really big differences. But it was a phenomenal job. I loved it all the way through.
Fantastic.
And we'll give it the comic book grade. I'm actually going to give this a near mint minus.
Oh, he's going near mint minus. I can go with that. Yeah, we'll go with the near mint for this. We're gonna start grading our stuff like comics. So our movies and stuff. So Ozark, I would go with
Yeah, we forgot to do that.
Ozark's got to be near mint plus.
Yeah, I would say
I go high on Ozark.
Season 3, I would definitely give it a mint. I would
mint,
give it a mint. Yeah,
mint.
I would give it a 9.6 to a 9.8.
All right, so Ozark is a mint, and Red Sun will go near mint.
Yep.
So
I would say
great.
A good 9.2. Yeah, it was awesome.
All right, guys, that's it for this show. We will see you, hear you. Well, you'll hear us. We won't hear you. But you can always contact us through Facebook and Dennis and Andy Show at yahoo.com if you want to get us that way as well. And until next week, bye-bye.
See you later.
Until next week, grab your 3D glasses.
Get your favorite comic books, roll them up, and put them in your back pocket the way you should treat comics.
Throw your pigskin up on the mantle. This is Dennis.
This is Andy. Later, friends.